Hello and welcome back to Manga Mondays, the only manga review show which always either is like 5 episodes preloaded ahead of itself or like 2 weeks late. Today I'm going to be talking about Spirit Circle, a manga from the same person who created Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer, which I haven't read, but I've read this one and it's pretty cool. I've only read the first volume, and I'm sure that a lot of viewers who will be interested in this manga will have already read farther than me. This review might not be that helpful for you, but this is a pretty interesting manga about this kid who meets this new transfer student girl in his school, and she seems to fucking violently hate him, but he is like totally in love with her. Also, she has a ghost that follows her around, and he can see ghosts, and so that's weird. And it turns out that the two of them have this incredibly long history with each other because they have been reincarnated many times over the years, and in most of their past lives they have encountered each other, as well as in future lives they will continue to do so. So I think that's going to be incorporated. That it seems to be suggested by. It says reincarnations that span across ancient history and the far-flung future, but we haven't actually seen the future in this particular volume. But anyways, so there's kind of like a Cloud Atlas thing going on, I guess. I haven't actually seen that movie either, but it sounds like the same plot synopsis. But these two characters have to kind of suss out what their histories were with each other and try to resolve this conflict. Because in this current timeline, the girl kind of likes the boy. Like, he's clearly a good guy, and she's having a difficult time hating him as much as she wants to based on their past lives, which she has much clearer memory of, and he doesn't. And so he's kind of reliving some of his past lives in dreams over the course of this volume. So a lot of this is just build up to like a central mystery, and I gotta tell you, it is very, very rare on this show that I read the first volume of a manga and I want to continue it on the basis of how interesting the story is. Like, on this show, typically, if I do buy the second volume of a manga, it's more about the art style or, like, the attitude. Like, reading, for instance, Fire Force, you know, I like it because it's an Atsushi Okubo manga. I like the style and everything. But it's been, like, forever since I bought a volume 2, or wanted to buy volume 2, just so I can know how the story continues. And that's how I felt in this. I really like the way that the backstories of characters are portrayed, like getting into their past lives. We start off with a more simplistic one, just like a sort of normal sappy backstory kind of thing about like when they were in an Aztec civilization, and the boys, like the version of him that existed at the time, was in love with this young girl. She was used as a sacrifice because that was like seen as an honor in this society, and the one who ultimately sacrificed her was the other girl, the girl who now hates him in the present. And basically, all throughout space and time, he's been causing problems for her previous incarnations. She's kind of been causing problems for him as well, and he's only kind of just realizing it. But both of them are kind of like never the fault of the other person. They're more the fault of the society that they belonged to at the time. And I think that's probably the most interesting element of the storytelling. It's like, the reason the girl had to be sacrificed is because that's how that Aztec civilization was. And later on, we get a much longer memory sequence, which is by far the more interesting one, and what really got me like engrossed in this story, where we learn about a period in like probably the 17 or 1800s, or whatever the witch trials were, where the main character, his incarnation was a knight who had to murder this witch. Like, he just wholesale murders her because that's what he's been taught, is that witches are evil and he has to do that. She brands him, and he basically has to fade away from society because like nobody will have him around. And so he spends like the rest of his life, like we get to see this character's entire life over the course of like 20 years, where we see how he falls away from society, how he makes these friends with like other kind of like social recluses who all eventually die on him. And he ends up taking in this little girl who somebody just like leaves on his doorstep, raising her to adulthood, and then he dies while he's trying to like move her to the next place. You know, spoiler alert, but like that's not the really important part, like those specific details. It's the way this story is told that makes it so interesting, and that we get quite so much detail into this character's life. Like, this feels like a complete story of this other character who now feeds into the way that these two main characters understand each other. And the girl is a reincarnation of the witch who he just like murdered at the start of his story, you know. Whereas from his perspective, this witch cursed him for his entire life and he was kind of miserable for the next 20 years, you know. So like it's never quite just their actions, but like the way that destiny kind of led them in this direction that's caused the conflict between them. Whereas in the current timeline, they kind of like each other. It's a really interesting interplay of elements, and I really want to see where it goes. The character artwork is really nice. Like, the character designs are pretty simple and straightforward. It's very, like, shonen manga. Like, none of these are character designs that you're going to remember forever. But the panel layouts are really good. Like, this manga has a great sense of pacing, a great sense of drama and tension. You know, there's some really, like, brutal expressions when characters are fucking feeling, you know, some type of way. I would say this is just all around, like, really well-constructed manga. It's great, it's dramatic. The only thing that I would knock it on at all is, like, the art style being, like, not incredible, not super memorable, but, like, the actual construction of the manga is so good that it easily makes up for that. And again, the story is just really interesting, and, like, it's kind of a really different experience with a shonen manga, like one that has like the typical shonen manga characters in the typical like middle school setting, but like the story so quickly veers away from that and isn't focused on just like the progression of these characters and their power systems, but more about exploring this like richly detailed history that they have together and like how that affects them in the modern day. So yeah, great manga. I'd recommend it. I'm definitely going to read more and check it out. See you next week.